Church. He is perhaps best known as the founding host of the popular programs Life on the Rock on EWTN and Morning Air on Relevant Radio. He is the creator of The Great Adventure, a popular Bible study system, and the author of the books My Life on the Rock and Catholic for a Reason. Jeff holds a Master of Arts degree in theology from Franciscan University in Steubenville and works in partnership with Dr. Scott Hahn in the Institute for Applied Biblical Studies. Here now is Jeff Cavins.
15 things to do in the midst of suffering. This list is not a definitive list, but I think it's a good list that we're going to start with. And I'd ask you as we go through it to stay with me and not to go ahead so that we can kind of learn together. This list really came about as a result of my own suffering. I want to tell you just a little bit about that in the midst of going through these particular points. It was about 2.5 years ago that I started to notice in my left arm a sharp pain coming up the left side of my arm when I leaned forward at the kitchen table. And I started to notice it was happening more. And then I noticed that I could duplicate it, that I could actually move forward and get this sharp pain. I mean, really sharp, like I got stabbed right inside the arm here. And time went on. I thought it's got to be some kind of muscle that I'll work out or whatever. And it got to the point where it started hurting all the time. And it started to become numb and hurting at the same time. And then it got to the point where I felt like I was being stabbed 24 hours a day, where I was walking around and I was holding my arm, and in the middle of the day or in the middle of dinner, I would let out with grunts and groans. It got out before I could even think to stop, and I'd be talking to my wife. Oh, and it just hurt, and it hurt, and it hurt, and I couldn't believe how bad it hurt. And then it got to the point where I was going to EWTN to do a show, and it was hurting so bad that I started feeling very nauseous. And we took off. Emily said, I'm bringing you to the airport. You're not going to drive yourself. You don't look very good. I knew I had to go do the show. So we got about 2 miles down the road, and I said, pull over. I said, I don't feel good. And she said, what? And the next thing I knew, there were paramedics on top of me in the back of an ambulance. And I had passed out and stopped breathing. And I was convulsing. I went into like a seizure. And the doctor told me that it's basically a condition where your body says to your mind, we're not here anymore. We're not going to stay around anymore. We're going to leave for a while to get out of this. The pain became very, very excruciating. And I lost a lot of sleep because I couldn't sleep at night. I would just roll around, and I'd go downstairs, and I'd sit there. And I want to be honest with you, I'm not a good sufferer. I spend a lot of evenings just I start crying, just think, God, I can't take it anymore. Mentally, I can't take it anymore. I'm tired. I have to go and do a seminar tomorrow night. And for some reason, the Lord's grace was there. You go out and you do a seminar and teach, and then afterwards, you're alone. You're alone in your pain. So it was in the midst of all of that that I sought out to seek the Lord and to find out the meaning of suffering. And I'd always heard the phrase, offer it up. Now, when I was growing up, if anyone I knew used offer it up, it basically meant, I'm almost done with dinner, just offer it up, go in the other room. It's like, get out of my hair, offer it up. I never knew what that word meant, the phrase, offer it up. We use it a lot, but what does it really mean to offer it up? Does it just mean, Lord, I'm hurting and I offer it up to you. Okay, now what? What does it mean? So I think these 15 things that I want to share with you will bring some meaning to what it means to offer it up in our lives. How do you join your suffering with the sufferings of Christ? How do you join your will and your heart to Him? This is the result of what happened to me. The long and short of the story is that I came back from EWTN on a trip 2 weeks after I passed out, and I couldn't take the pain anymore. And I called up a local priest who gave me the name of a surgeon who all he does is surgery on the neck. His name was Dr. Smith, and I went over, called him right away, and it turned out he was home. He was actually on his cell phone. And I said, Dr. Smith, my name's Jeff. And he said, yes, I know who you are. He said, I watch your show. I thought, well, that's interesting. He said, in fact, I went on a cruise with you and Scott Hahn, a scripture cruise. I said, you did? He said, yeah. I told him what was happening, and he said, come over immediately with your MRI. I went over immediately. I brought him my MRI, and he put it up on the wall. And he looked at it like this, and I'll never forget, he looked at it, and you could see on his face, he just went, and his look said, "You're in trouble." I said, "It's just a herniated disc, isn't it?" That's what I was told the last doctor I went to. He said, "It's just like a little herniated disc." And he said, "No, your disc is split. And it's pushing on the root nerve very bad." And he tested my arms, and he said, "You've got the strength of about a 2-year-old little baby." And he said, "If you don't have something done very quickly, you're going to lose your left arm as far as the use of it." And I'd already lost the triceps here, and still to today, I don't have really much of a tricep anymore. And I said, "Oh." And then I'm thinking, okay, the solution. Once again, I'm looking for, well, do you got a pill for this? So you remember that back in the garden, there's got to be an easy way here. And I said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, what we have to do is we have to go in and take that disc out." I'm not liking the sound of it already. I was like, take the disc out. And then we take a bone from your hip and we put it in there, and then we put a titanium plate over it and screw it in and fuse your neck. I'm going, the solution sounds worse than the problem. And that's when you start thinking, I might just live with this problem. So what about my left arm? I'm right-handed anyway. So I said, "Doctor, be honest with me. What would you do? What would you do if this was your neck?" And he went like this. He rolled down his collar and he said, "It was my neck." He said, "About 5 years ago, I was operating on a C6-7, which is what you have, and as I bent the wrong way, my C6-7 just exploded." And he said, "I had this operation." He said, "There's about 4 things that can go wrong in this operation, and the odds are very small that they will. All 4 happened to me." He said, "I have been where you're at." And he said, "It was in the midst of that suffering where I lost my practice, I lost my friends. I was nothing. And in the midst of nothing," he said, "I gave my life to God." This is my surgeon who's telling me about the theological ramifications of suffering. And I'm going, wow. I said, "Doctor, what would you do if you were me?" He said, "I would have it operated on." I said, "How soon?" And he said, "Tomorrow morning." So he said, "This is 6 in the evening." He said, "Tomorrow morning." And I said, and I think I'm safe with the next one. When would you be able to do it? Because he's known all over the country for this one surgery. He said, "When would you be able to do it?" And he said, "Tomorrow morning." I said, "I need to pray about this. I really need to pray about this." And I knew what the answer was, though. And I called Emily on the way home, and I told her, and I said, "Emily, God is opening up a door for this. And I am emptied. I'm emptied. I'm totally giving everything over to God." And the next morning, I went into the hospital, and I was laying down in the prep room where they put the IV in and everything else. And I'm laying there, and I hear this crying across the room. This shows you the Lord can use any situation you're in to be a blessing if you're willing to offer it up with Him. I hear this crying, and I couldn't lift my head because I had no strength. So I lifted my head up. I said, "Hello?" I said, "Who's there?" And I hear this young lady, "Just me." I said, "What's your name?" And she told me, and I said, "My name is Jeff." I said, "What are you in for?" She said, "I have to have my C6-7 taken out and my neck fused." Me too. And I said, "Are you scared?" We're not even looking at each other. I said, "Are you scared?" She started crying. She goes, "Yes." About 22 years old. I said, "Can I pray for you?" She said, "Yes, I would appreciate that." I started to pray for her. And I was interceding for her. And I prayed. And I went into surgery, and she went into surgery. And they took the bone out of my hip. They didn't with her. They took a cadaver and put the bone in. So she didn't have this to deal with. So the next day after surgery, day and a half, I'm on the side of my bed. I don't know if you've ever had anesthesia. It's a little bit hard to go to the bathroom after the next couple of days. And I'm over there, and I am just aching, and I got to go to the bathroom, and I can't go to the bathroom. And I'm trying to stand next to my bed. And the gowns they give you are not very flattering. So I'm standing over there, I'm thinking, "Help me." And I even prayed the Jewish prayer for what's called open pipes. I thought, God, help me. And all of a sudden I hear this, hello, hello, you know, I got this neck brace on. Well, what? It's this girl. She's all happy. And she comes in and says, I just wanted to tell you, thank you for praying for me. I feel so much better. I go, oh, that's good. You know, I'm thinking, how does she feel better? And I feel like I'm about to die. And so God was able to use that situation with Dr. Smith to bring healing to me and bring me, in my life, to bring healing to a young girl from Edina. And that's the thing about suffering, is when we understand suffering, we're also the people who bring relief of suffering to people. Because we understand it. Because we understand the value of it, and we understand the redemptive value. It's like almost like a mystery. It's a double-edged type thing, where on one hand it's redemptive, on another hand we relieve it because we understand it. And we act like Christ, and that is, people are healed and delivered, but also people learn to live by God's grace in the midst of the ordeal. In the midst of the ordeal.